he was state-of-the-art in law enforcement technology.
You called for backup?
But the system thinks he's become too independent.
He disobeyed a direct order. I want to know why.
His friend was in trouble and he made a judgment call.
Too unpredictable.
They're saying he's gone underground.
Oh, there goes our PR budget.
Too human.
We have a warrant out for the arrest of RoboCop.
Now the system's out to get him. Because he's fighting for the people.
Stay here! Fight for your home! If you want to get in there, you're going to have to shoot through us.
I don't have a huge problem with that.
Get them for me.
I promise.
All right, Mr. RoboCop. Come and get me.
So I take the belt loop from around my neck, I pull up my pants, I clean the place for fingerprints, and all I can think is, damn it, Murphy, you're becoming your father.
Your father's quite the man.
Oh, you know it. All right, Rich.
Reminds me of David Carradine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pop that dog.
Oh, hey.
Yeah, let's go ahead and bring it up. Yeah, you prematurely popped your dog.
You know what the funny thing is? I always prematurely pop my dog.
Yeah.
And that's not to say anything about me, like, personally.
Or sexually.
I swear. I just can't help it. I'm always like, oh, we're about to record. Crack. And instead of like, oh, we're about to record, we're not recording, you idiot.
Yeah.
Happens, same thing. Booze and the dudes. I always do it. I crack it before you guys start recording. I can't, dude.
But like in my head, when you cracked it this time, I was like, no! And I was like 1 second too late.
It was your face that told me as I was doing it. I was like, what am I doing wrong? Crack.
So, welcome to Beer and Bad Movies, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are continuing Revenge of the Three trilogies. Today we watched RoboCop 3.
The best of the four.
Yeah. This is
four.
This is the thing.
I think it may be 5, but I think it's 4 movies.
You know what? There's like in the universe of RoboCop, you got RoboCop 1, 2, and 3. You also have some like I guess straight to DVD.
Yes, we do, yeah.
And then there's one called RoboCop Resurrection.
Yeah. Edward Furlong. No, I'm just kidding.
that's a little Crow reference right there. Yeah. And also you got to remember this franchise at the time that RoboCop 3 came out still had a little bit of juice in it. After this, there was a TV show, lasted 1 season. Mm-hmm. It was actually pretty good, I thought.
No, it was entertaining, but I mean, I bet if I go back now and watch it, I'm going to be like, what an asshole.
Probably.
I'm probably going to want to punch the younger self in my head.
Probably.
Who are you, mister? Like, I'm an older, cooler you. I'm sent from the future to tell you not to watch this show. Mm. Why? Because it ruins your life. Like, really? That's why you got sent back in time? Yeah. You think that, like, imagine, I don't think the Terminator was what the Terminator was.
So you think somebody went around and changed it in the future?
I do.
Or the past?
I think that it just got out of control. I think the Terminator started from like, hey, go and change that one thing you did to be like, now you need to change everything. Same thing with like, we're going to be doing the same thing with this RoboCop. RoboCop was so bad. Part 3 was so bad.
Yeah.
It almost comes back around to being good, but it doesn't. It's just bad.
You know what? I was looking up, people's thoughts on this movie, and the same word kept bringing back.
Those people's thoughts, are they still alive, or are those people who committed suicide shortly after they left their thoughts?
Maybe they killed themselves. The word that they used was boring. And yes, this is boring. You know why this is boring? Okay, actually...
The lack of gunfights.
Exactly, actually. So, before we get into the rating system, let's go ahead and break down the first 2 RoboCop movies. So, RoboCop 1, Alex Murphy is a cop that's new to Old Detroit Police Department. Now, the Old Detroit Police Department is actually bought out by a evil corporation called OCP, Omni Consumer Products. And their whole plan, which actually is the plan that goes into part 2, is they want Old Detroit to be so crime-ridden that the police have to just basically bail out, and then they start demolishing all of the property so that they can make Delta City. But at the same time, they have to look like, no, we are trying to help the police, wink, wink. So when Alex Murphy is brutally murdered...
They pretty much bought out the higher command of the police, because they show us in part 1 that when higher command of police doesn't respond, like snap, snap, chop, chop, they get really butthurt. Yeah. And then they have that dude Bob Morton go over there and be like, look, I fucking own you guys.
Yeah, stay out of our way.
Stay the fuck out of my way. You know?
Yeah.
So it's like, wow, that's pretty much. Anyways, that's like they show you what future's going to be like if it goes that route.
In the first movie, all it really is that Alex Murphy, who's now basically been resurrected, he doesn't remember who he is. He's just a robot, essentially. That's why he's RoboCop. But his memories are returning, and he's starting to realize, no, wait, I'm Alex Murphy. And also, I actually I totally forgot about this.
It doesn't help that he runs into Lois in the
Yes.
fucking hallway. And she's like, what the fuck? And then...
Go ahead and you say it. Say it. You want to say it.
Murphy, it's you. And then it just... He's like, what? Like, it shocked him. So you could see that even as him supposed to be a robot,
yeah,
he's recording things. His system is programmed to record certain things that are going to be used for playback later on in criminal investigation. Instead, he's using playback to remind himself of who he is. It's a traumatic thing.
Yeah.
And when they murdered him, you know, long story short, you could really see that from, if you were to watch part 1, skip part 2, if you want. Cut right to part 3, you can be like, what happened in between part 1 and 3? And then you're forced to watch part 2. You'd be like, oh my god, they've been butchering it from here.
Yeah.
They were hacking it, starting to hack it up from here.
And a fun fact that I think was played down hardcore in the first one is that the reason that Lois feels so obligated to try and get Murphy back, it was her idea to go into that.
It was.
She was one.
And he wanted to wait for backup.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember that. He was like, I called him backup, and she goes in, and then, anyways, you know.
And just he had one of the, even as a kid, I still can't watch him get murdered today because that death scene was brutal.
It was, but even as a kid, this is why I think something's wrong with me. Because I remember when I first watched the Titanic scene, I was laughing.
Yeah.
And in theaters, it was extra long.
Mm-hmm.
So I was laughing for that much longer. And I remember apologizing to my mom in the theater, being like, I'm sorry, I can't help it, I'm laughing. And I remember people crying, whatever. And I remember that night that I was watching Titanic, I distinctly remember it pouring so much rain out there. It was at El Monte. Yeah. It was like I could probably track the date because it was like really bad. I think it was El Nino was coming down. It was really...
When you saw this movie?
When I saw Titanic, like 98. And I just remember laughing at that scene so hard that when I was wiping the tears from my eyes, I looked up behind me. There was a woman just staring in shock, looking at me.
What is wrong with you?
And then I look. Yes, and then I look back at her. I go, I am so sorry. Like, that's happened to me more times in my life than I like to count. I have had to apologize for laughing at Titanic. I've had to apologize for laughing at some lady's horror story at an AA meeting. I'm starting to really believe there's something deep and profoundly wrong with me.
Some of your evilness has actually rubbed off on me, but let's not get on to Titanic. Let's continue with this.
I'm trying to say that I think that as bad as some people may say that, you know, RoboCop 3 is, it's good. There's like a punker scene. They have all these punk rockers come in. And...
We're going to get to that. I do want to bring this up because my brother is like the king of continuity errors. And when the first RoboCop showed up, he told me about one that I was like, oh yeah, because you notice how RoboCop walks very slow, like.
Which brother?
Kenny.
I assumed it was him.
Yeah. Peter Weller talked about how he actually he went to some Japanese acting coach to learn how to walk and move like RoboCop because RoboCop has very distinct walk and movement. And then if you watch, this is towards one of our favorite scenes ever of all time, where Megan is in the van and he sees RoboCop behind the big toxic waste thing.
Yeah.
And you see RoboCop moves step, step, step. But once Megan is so close to him in the van... I know
what you're talking about. He jumps. It's so funny.
Yes.
He becomes like straight one of us with a Power Ranger suit on. Yeah.
And then he goes back to walking.
Yep. That's actually always been one of my favorite scenes in my life. Like, if you're old enough to have ever enjoyed a food fight before school or life became complete SJW or whatever you want to call it, politically correct or sensitive, quote unquote, whatever you want to call it. If you've ever been old enough to enjoy that, you'll know that at the end of a food fight, there's always one kid who's left looking like the guy from RoboCop who's like, Emil, who's like, help me, get off me, man.
Skin just hanging off his bones.
There's always one kid in your food, and he was usually the most sensitive kid in school.
Yeah.
And I remember back in the day, I lived in San Dimas, and there's this kid named Joel. half handicapped. I want to say like half
Oh,
retarded.
goodness.
We had a food fight, and he got the worst of it, and he had cheese pizza hanging off his face. And I just remember busting up, and I felt sad for him. But in my head, I was thinking of the RoboCop scene, and I started laughing, and no one knew that's what I was laughing at. But I do remember the looks I got from the girls. Bastard. The girls who are usually my friends. I was like always a friend of girls in school, not to brag, but like I remember like so many girls looking at me during cafeteria, looking at me like their whole. I could see I could see all their opinions about me.
What piece of shit are you?
Yes, in a second their opinions changed about me. They're like, "Is he laughing at Joel?" And I'm like, "You've never seen RoboCop."
So these movies actually, if I'm reading it right. The movies, the timeline of all three movies is really about a year.
Yeah.
Because part 2 basically takes place 2 weeks after part 1. They make a statement. You've been following around your Mrs. Murphy for 2 weeks now. You know, he got all done up. So like we're just gonna suggest that maybe it's been 2 weeks since part 1. Now, OCP is getting closer and closer to its deal of Delta City, and they decide they're gonna make a second RoboCop. And because now there's a big drug problem with the new drug nuke.
Yeah.
And by the way, like, this is the difference between 1 and 2 versus 3 is that 1 and 2 are extraordinarily violent, lots of blood.
They are.
There's a scene in part 2 where there's like this immigrant lady who they're doing the bus and she's like in the limousine. Please don't know what's going on.
No, I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. Tell me more.
And the bad guy Kane just like, oh god, get her out.
Yeah,
shoots her.
Yeah, she was pretty loud.
Yeah,
you gotta look. I'm not saying I would. That's horrible. But if I'm a drug dealer and I'm a bad guy like Kane, you gotta admit that scene set it up pretty well to be like, shut her up.
Yeah, that's why they
filmed it that way. And also, the reason I brought that up is not to be a dick or sarcastic or facetious or whatever the fuck they want to call it. This is in context. It's because they like that was to me about. I'm glad actually we're discussing RoboCop 3 because this puts in perspective. This allows me to talk about good movies compared to bad movies.
Yeah. And
why I think we are eligible to make, you know what I mean? We qualify to be able to say this is a good movie or this is a bad movie.
Oh yeah.
We honestly, you guys, we live in 2019. If you're listening to this, you'll know. Look at all the old movies before. This is not just bullshitting or me and DK saying, "Hey, we're the best at like saying what's a good or bad movie." This is authentically a bad movie. You can go back in time. You can see good movies, bad movies. It's not like I'm saying which would be a good chore to go and watch Citizen Kane and then watch RoboCop 3 right after. I doubt you're going to do that.
We're about to get to that. We're about to get to like why Part 3 is a bad movie. Just the last thing I want to say about Part 2 is that so Kane, who's a drug dealer, now becomes he becomes the second RoboCop, and they have probably, in my opinion, one of the best stop motion animation fights I've ever seen.
Yeah.
At the very end, it's a great fight.
Yeah, but that cuts back into my my little small rant about practical effects in Turtles 3.
Oh man.
Which is do stop motion because I'm trying to do something right now with my mom's doll, her little scary creepy doll. I want to do a stop motion. I'm trying to do a stop motion murder movie with her, and I think because practical effects bring people into a certain type of whatever you want to call it. Well, it brings people into that. You can't just use animation or CGI and assume people are going to be enthralled and captivated. It doesn't bring you into it.
This is around the beginning of computer animation.
You said it yourself. RoboCop Part 1 and Part 3 took place in between the time span of what? And by Part 3, he's already has a jetpack. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Yeah. He's pulling the whole Batman with nipples type shit.
Yeah. He really is. So now we're gonna. So in Part 2, it was just more about OCP continuing their reign of greed and corruption. Now in Part 3, OCP somehow is bankrupt and takes on a Japanese partner.
Also doesn't make sense because RoboCop himself had 50 years of spare parts, and that's according to Bob Morton.
Yes.
The second big baddie in there. Which, you gotta think...
No. You're thinking of, what's his name, talking about Ed 209, because he goes, 50 years of spare parts, who cared if it worked?
Yeah, but I thought, you're right. Bob Morton had more. They had more than that. Mm-hmm. They had RoboCop on lock for a long time. OCP going bankrupt makes even less sense now that you brought that.
Yeah.
You're right.
It doesn't.
Bob Morton didn't say that. That was the other baddie. That was the main baddie.
Yeah.
So RoboCop was
Dick.
set for years, man.
Yes. Yeah, it's so you know another reason why this movie sucks.
Wasn't RoboCop a military project?
Yeah, the movie timeline's about realistically maybe a year and a half. He
doesn't have a beard. Like that's a thing.
He's kind of a rotting corpse, man.
Is he?
Yes.
See, like I mean, those are things I think people should discuss. We should really get into that. Like, man, if
maybe they shave.
But if we had a bigger fan base, we could like, hey, have discussions with like, do you think RoboCop's like fucking face was growing beard? Like underneath that metal, is he not growing a thick ginger type beard like Tormund? Or is he just rotting? Is his skin slowly rotting? Which I think, because he's not living fucking tissue, you know, like Terminator,
yeah.
like under fucking skeleton. He's not that.
He is what he is. You're
being nice.
The first two RoboCop.
Let it be known, DK is the nice one of us, you guys.
Yeah,
Let it be known.
RoboCop 1 and 2 is played by Peter Weller, one of my favorites.
Yep.
In part 3, he's
Buckaroo Banzai.
Buckaroo fucking Banzai.
We should do that. That's a bad movie.
We will.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite.
Peter Weller. I'm sorry.
This one's played by Robert John Burke. He was the lead in Thinner. I remember. Yeah, he had a recurring character on Law and Order SVU where he was like the internal affairs guy.
Yeah, I remember.
Now, here's why this movie fails. Number one, it's a PG-13 movie in a rated R reality.
Very true. And honestly, if we had started out with that, most people would be like, oh, right away you got me. Like, yep, you're right. Mm-hmm. How do you go from 2 rated R's to a PG-13?
Yeah.
That tells you the quality of suffering.
It's not...
Because really, Ninja Turtles Part 1 and Part 2 were verging on kind of the same recipe that RoboCop 1 and 2 were going on.
Yeah.
Which was, we have realism, we have something darker and it's true to humanity, which we can kind of believe the military would take a corpse and do some weird shit like that.
I'm sure they
That's kind of takes the real reality, and it cuts into this whole, like, is he human under there or is he machine? Part 3 takes that and is like, who gives a shit? He has a jetpack. Like,
pretty much.
And that's what you get. That's where you get a bad movie.
The story opens with a family in old Detroit, but their house is being demolished. And they're these soldiers called rehab soldiers.
Yeah,
rehabilitation. Yeah, they're basically a mercenary army bought for by OCP to clear out people. But realistically, what they're doing is they're killing them.
Yeah.
And there comes a kind of resistance with us. The character that CC Pounder plays.
Yeah.
And she's not inspiring at all.
No.
She tries to like give like a speech halfway through, like don't leave because they're not gonna take you. They're taking your homes and they're putting you in concentration camps, basically.
I think right after that she started working on her role for that End of Days, and that was it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I don't really remember her in many movies. Like she's always kind of had been that character, really, in most of her movies, like that empowering black chick.
Yeah.
And that's always been like.
But yeah, so like the I guess they call it the Resistance, the Rebels, whatever, of old Detroit, are raiding the police locker where they keep all their guns and stuff.
Yep.
And then RoboCop gets the call, so he's following them at first, but then they get another call where Lois.
Are you sure? Okay, no, you're going on the right track. Yeah. I'm not gonna interrupt.
See, yeah, RoboCop is following them, but then he gets a distress call from Lois, and
I thought you were going ahead of the Lois thing, and I'm like, man, you have to talk about Lois. Yeah.
I am. Lois. Hold on, let me bring her up. Actually, of course, my phone would do that now.
Now, if you guys want to know what Lois is doing right now as we speak, you
go to
can...
Home Depot.
Yeah, she's in the electric department.
Officer Ann Lois, played by Nancy Allen. Now, she was actually only in this movie for a little bit because she did not want to be in this movie.
Good.
She actually said, I'll be in this movie if you kill my character. And they kill Lewis, like, within 20 minutes, 30 minutes?
I want to say it was less than 20 minutes, honestly. Because I remember when I was watching the movie, it was, like, almost 10 minutes in, and she was already wounded. By the time RoboCop and all that happens, I want to say it was less than 20 minutes. She was
probably less
dead.
than 20, yeah.
Because he builds his anger... They build a small whatever and all that happens within less than 120 minutes.
Yeah.
So I want to say within the first 20 she was already dead. The next 100 is bullshit.
Well, this movie's only like 90 minutes long. But
wow.
I mean, still, yeah, it's not good. And God, to me, it's just kind of boring to see a non-violent RoboCop.
Yeah.
The story is just boring. Like, realistically, this is a cash grab.
I got a story, really. I have to share the story. When I was 6 years old, I remember clearly. I was living in El Monte, California, a place called Brookside. It was a mobile home unit. Mm-hmm. And it used to be housing for only older people, a retirement community. We were the first family that they allowed in to start living there, renting there as a family. For a young family to start renting there, not old people retiring. So we move in. I've seen some crazy shit. That's besides the point. But I remember the first Halloween we spent there. Some guy dressed up like RoboCop. It was super cool.
That's nice.
He did the full thing. He hired chicks to dress like prostitutes. They were hanging on him. Nice. So he would walk around the whole park, even though he was pretending to like ask for trick or treat. He would go from house to house, and kids want to take pictures with him. He was really cool for doing that. And my mom took pictures, and I think my dad and her got into like a drunken argument that night. I think he broke her camera. But I remember I was like, wow, we never had pictures of that. But me and Mike took pictures with RoboCop, and we're like, oh man, what happened to RoboCop? Mike was like, oh, that dude wasn't real RoboCop. And I was like, it seemed like it, didn't it? And he was like, yeah, dude. But I was like, yeah, I remember my dad broke the camera. They got in a big old fight that night because my dad was a drunken idiot and didn't want to take us trick-or-treating. My mom did. So my dad took off. He stormed off. But I remember he was right. My brother was right. I remember my dad slamming the camera on the floor. But before that, I remember he had his dad dressed up. The guy playing RoboCop, his dad dressed up as the guy who was like, I'll buy that for $1. Nice. It was so cool to see, like, these chicks going around like, oh, fun, like, fawning over this RoboCop. Yeah. And the guy going, I'll buy that for $1, like every other house. And I was like, it was like, to me as a kid, I was like, it's the movie come to life. And anyways, that stuck with me. So RoboCop's always been like a thing for me in my life.
RoboCop,
kids, they marketed to us as kids. This is not bullshit. Yeah. We were kids, and they marketed RoboCop, rated R, 1 and 2, as toys for us.
Oh yeah,
we had Ed 209s that had caps on them.
Yep, I remember.
That shot real caps, fire out the barrel.
Yeah.
Damn,
you
dude.
would snap it in the...
Pussy-ass kids nowadays. You say what you want. These kids are fucking big-time pussies.
Yeah.
They're like, no, if they get burnt, we'll get sued. I'm like, dude, we got burnt all the time but didn't say shit to our parents. Yeah. What the fuck?
This because even I remember watching the first RoboCop as a kid, and I remember seeing the title, RoboCop, and I was like, ooh, cool, it's a robot. And then you just see him get... Everyone, Can you fly, Bobby? Stuff like that.
Can you fly, Bobby, dude? That's honestly.
And again, none of that is in this fucking movie.
You know what? I knew those movies. I don't think it's a good thing. I'm not promoting. Listen, if you're underage and you're listening to us, turn it off right now. I don't even know why you're listening to us. There's our disclaimer. Now, I'm glad that you're not and you're listening to us. But...
You sound like Al Bundy. You don't need your parents' permission.
Grab your mom and dad's credit card. They're stupid anyway, right? Go ahead and be our Patreon. No, but yeah, it does, dude. Like, you got to think when we were kids. What was I doing? At third grade, fourth grade? Why do I know RoboCop by heart by third and fourth grade? I shouldn't.
You probably watched a lot of it.
Because my parents were degenerates, and we're not. Let's come out and say it. I'm going to say it. I'll admit it. Maybe Joe won't because he loves his parents too much. I'm going to say it. My parents were drug addicts and degenerates, and I seen rated R movies raise me. If it wasn't for that sick part of Hollywood that I condemn now so much because I'm older and mature, that sick part of Hollywood kind of warped me and made me... It really did guide me into certain kind of jokes or a niche or whatever you want to call it. And a lot of people don't want to admit that, dude.
My parents weren't degenerates, but they were drug addicts. They're former now. But yeah, no, I was the same where I was kind of raised by the television, by watching whatever was on. That's why by the time I was 15, I knew that past 10 o'clock, Skinamax was going to be on.
I found out about Skinamax because I was homeless with my brother Mike, living at my grandmother's house. And I caught him masturbating at 11 o'clock at night. He goes, this is funny. He goes, so you going to bed around when? Automatically makes me suspicious.
Yeah.
So I go, I don't know, 10:30. I say that on purpose to set him up. 11 o'clock rolls around. Guess what I do? I mosey on out there.
Fat,
yep. Fat. I'm like, this ain't RoboCop 3, you piece of shit.
Is there anything about this movie that you least liked?
To be honest, yeah, there was
But you don't have to be hated because like I liked RoboCop.
I'm not trying to hate on it all the way, but I liked when he got the samurai got punched in his jaw.
Oh.
And his jaw got like he went and his jaw went replaced.
Oh yeah.
It like I don't know what it was about it, but something like
It just looked cool to you.
It looked cool. And I thought if they did more of that, I thought because the movie kind of starts out like that, like, oh, this is gonna be the baddie.
Yeah,
you don't get much of that baddie in the movie.
Yeah.
He does his samurai shit.
Maybe 4 minutes.
Yeah. And then when it comes down to the final throwdown, which I won't get into just quite yet, you expect more is what I'm saying from the baddie at the beginning. He's able to slice through a telephone pole or whatever pole.
It was something holding up a giant sign.
Yeah, holding up a giant sign at a gas station, and it comes down like nothing. You're like, what the fuck? And then you think, as a fan of RoboCop, who's rooting for him, that's why you're there watching it to begin with.
Yeah.
You're thinking, shit, my hero, or the guy I'm rooting for, Rocky Balboa in this case, RoboCop, he has to go up against this. So what do you get in the movie? Not that. What do you get is the fat guy from Office and Dodgeball.
Yeah, betraying the resistance.
CC Powers, you get this other fucking guy from X-Files, this other fucking no-name, the guy from Malcolm in the Middle, the sergeant from Malcolm in the Middle, the army guy with the hook for a hand. You get that actor. You get all these people side acting. This is not the movie you think it's building up to be.
Yeah.
The main baddie doesn't build up to be a main baddie like some Game of Thrones shit.
Yeah.
There is no main baddie. He's the beginning.
Well, no, there is a main
and
baddie,
the
but he's a very lame bad guy.
Because he doesn't build himself up.
Yeah, the guy's name. Ooh, he's got a comic book name. His real name is John Castle.
Good name.
Yeah, and of course his character was Paul McTaggart, and he's the leader of the rehab soldiers. And
brought to you by OCP.
And,
which are bankrupt.
Yeah, the whole they're just bankrupt. The whole
which you got to remember because if they're bankrupt, how does he have a wad of cash to throw at these kids?
I'm thinking he's getting that from the Japanese.
Ooh, that's right. The people he's doing business with.
Yeah, well, the idea is that they're not necessarily bankrupt. It's just they for as much money as they need for Delta City, they do not have enough.
Yeah, you're right. That doesn't mean they're not corrupt and accepting money.
Exactly. So the whole idea is that the Resistance, along with RoboCop, who's now fueled by anger because he just lost Lois, is they have to stay in the area for 4 days or something like that. That's all it is. And once that happens, the contract that OCP has over the city is over.
While we're doing this podcast, I can't help but feel like we can come up with a better RoboCop 3 on our own. If Lois dies, and that's the last of Murphy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that right there should be enough to, like, have turned RoboCop 3 into a movie where it's not PG-13. If Lois dies that soon in the movie, that should become like almost an NC-17 movie right there. Because if you think about RoboCop 1, who brought him back to who he was? Yeah. Lois. His family left him. And then what brought... When we're watching part 3, the first thing that introduces us to any kind of heroicism or, RoboCop being a good guy is Lois is in distress. And so these punkers, he comes to go and fuck up.
Yeah. Yeah, there are punkers called scatterbrains in this movie, and they're stupid.
So it's like, what's to stop RoboCop, or in this case, Murphy, what's to stop him from going full-on psycho? Nothing. And the people who do RoboCop...
the character of RoboCop is always kind of...
but I mean, like, someone who was, like, doing a movie... I don't know. Maybe I'm taking RoboCop 3 too serious. But, yeah.
Check this out.
Could be... I'm just saying, it could have been a decent movie.
Here's a better idea for RoboCop. Noir RoboCop. Lois is dead. RoboCop's got to find her killer. And why was she killed?
So then RoboCop's now played by Bruce Willis.
No, I'm just saying, like, he becomes an actual detective.
Passion of the RoboCop.
He's like, it would be like freaking Rorschach. He's got to find out who killed Lois and why. That'd be a great one right there.
RoboCop in a trench coat. No one's seen that.
Fuck yeah,
like Raphael. Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
No one notices a big ass turtle in a trench coat or RoboCop.
Oh, they just think he's a punker.
300 fucking slab of steel, blue steel.
Which also, I kind of call bullshit on a rocket launcher because if you remember, RoboCop's supposed to be weighs like a ton.
Yeah.
Like a legit ton.
It's 2,000 pounds.
Yeah, so like a rocket is going to be able to lift just him? I don't know that.
No, it wouldn't.
This is why
it would be enough to probably leave a small hole somewhere in his steel. But if you remember how thick his steel was when they were like... Anyways, that's us being fans, going fandom into a movie that doesn't really deserve it, if you really think about it.
The reason that this movie is in the Revenge of the Three, as far as this trilogy goes, is because, see, like, again, number one, it is a cash grab. You look at this movie, it is not a good movie.
That offends me about movies when they cash grab.
And on top of that, like, okay, so let's, like, make RoboCop cooler. We're putting a jetpack on him. He's got a rocket launcher, machine gun hand now.
But that's what offends me over other movies, is because we can't argue, we can't sit here and argue and say other movies aren't cash grabs. That's the reason they created movies to begin with, is to become cash grabs, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this is a good story, it's going to make money. But what about your good story being consistent, like, all the time, so it can continue to make money? Mm-hmm. A lot of these ones don't do that. They go, I know, Homeward Bound 2.
Lost in San Francisco.
Yeah. This time, yeah. It's like, no, you're not going to do Hellraiser in space, and they did.
They did.
Neil deGrasse Tyson in hell. Like, oh, fuck.
So here, I got some news for you. All right. Now, this movie, as we said, was a cash grab, was a failure. Budget?
Part 3 was a failure?
Yeah.
Oh.
The budget, $22 million.
Oh, fuck. Someone got rich.
Total box office gross, $10.6 million.
Ah! And that's with all their friends and family
That's
going.
everybody. That's all.
Shit.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if that came out nowadays? It would be the guy playing RoboCop 3 be like, everyone, go see RoboCop 3. And we would all be like...
Yeah, like social media would be all over that shit.
Social media would be like, hey, did you guys see that asshole from the new RoboCop 3 telling every one of his family to go see it? That's how bad it is. But... And like, if we can look back in time, I would love to go and like research his mailing address and see all the people he wrote letters to. You know, he would like, Dear Mom, I know it's been a long time since we've talked, but I've recently been in a movie in Hollywood and I'm actually making progress. It's called RoboCop 3, and I really think you should see it. I go and I avenge my partner Lois's death. Like, holy shit, my son's a loser. She's like, his mom would be like, I seen RoboCop 1. You shouldn't have touched it. That's how I feel.
The writer-director of this movie...
Dead.
No.
Coke overdose.
No. Just shut up. His name, which is right out of a bad guy movie, Fred Decker. That's his name. Now, I'm going to be bringing up some of his,
accolades?
Yes. Now, he has written Night of the Creeps, Monster Squad.
And 1 + 1 is 3.
If Looks Could Kill. Did you ever see that?
Yeah.
Movie? He did a Tales from Crypt, a couple episodes of Enterprise. Now, his last credit is a movie that's on our podcast.
I'm going to say Eric's Revenge, Fan of them all.
Nope. Starts with a P, though.
Oh, no, not the Phantom.
Nope.
Kiss meets Phantom of them all?
I'll show you.
How many P's did we do? No. No.
Say it so my powers can flow through you.
The Predator.
He wrote The Predator.
Holy shit.
Son of a bitch.
Dylan.
You son of a bitch.
Yeah. Okay.
And he also directed Monster Squad as well. So I kind of like, that's one of my favorite kids movies.
Yeah, as a kid it was, but as an older adult, here we go.
No, that movie holds up today as far as I'm concerned. But that movie is not safe for kids.
No, it's not, and it also makes me think: was he like a pederast back then? And I say this friendly like because I'm good with kids, but only because it's like. I don't know what it is. Kids like me for some reason, but I'll tell you this. It's hard. It's kind of hard working with kids when you know that kids constantly need and want, like, entertainment value. They want you to constantly be in, like, woo and wowing them. It makes me think twice about, I'm not going to get it, like, too deep into that, but this is what makes me not trust, like, a lot of Hollywood is because, like, we grew up on that. Yeah. And the Nickelodeon shit now, and there's so much, like... Well, I'll just to shorten it. There's a lot of pedo shit that goes on in there. There is. And I've gotten 3 people who are willing to be on our podcast who used to work in movies who are willing to talk about it. Mm-hmm. But it's I don't want to bring them over here and unless we're willing to be giving them the floor for shit. It's kind of hard to do that and not make it our podcast is depressing. So to stick to topic in beer and bad movies, I'll say this, that same guy who's doing RoboCop 3, it's probably a reason why he keeps coming up short. And it's not because I think he's probably a pedophile, it's because I think that unless you're into that type of thing in Hollywood, you're always going to...
Let's not make any assumptions over a guy we don't know.
No, not him. I'm saying that he probably doesn't do that stuff. It's because if you do that stuff, you're usually bigger in Hollywood. And if you don't, Hollywood doesn't accept you as one of theirs. You're usually like third-rate, fourth-rate director, producer. I just want to spill the truth real quick while we're online, so people who do know the truth and are into movies like me, they're not like, oh, this guy's a fucking douchebag or a sellout. He's not calling Hollywood for what it is. Because Hollywood is that. They really are. Nickelodeon's known for that. People are famous for that. So
the writer-director of Jeepers Creepers went to jail for pedophilia.
Yeah.
And then he finished Jeepers Creepers 3 on his own dime, and it sucked.
Yeah, look at Jeepers Creepers. That's my point. But it's like, who keeps giving these people passes? Like, your movie sucked. Don't give them any more money. You know what I mean?
I'm not sure. All right. So we were saying, are there anything we like about this movie? I liked.
A bunch of that shit. But
I liked a RoboCop driving a pink Cadillac.
I love that.
that was a good cheeky moment.
That was really funny.
I did like RoboCop doing RoboCop things because that was kind of like a good little callback to when he was in RoboCop 2 when he was on a motorcycle.
Oh man, I totally forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. Chasing Kane in a garbage truck.
Yeah, well, it was a garbage truck. I was like, what kind of truck? Yeah, it was a garbage truck.
RoboCop was there to take out the trash, man.
Oh, I see what you did there.
Yeah. No, I didn't. They did. As a kid, I remember that. I was like, yeah, take out the trash, Robo. Take it off.
So.
I don't know.
Well, do you recommend this movie at all?
No.
Me neither.
No, not at all. I would recommend you guys massage your own feet, or take a nice hot shower if you have it, or go outside and punch a kid in the face. Anything you can to kill the time, but do not watch RoboCop 3.
I just realized actually something. There's a little bit of like backstory because there's also like a little kid in this movie, and there's the doctor that created him that's in this movie.
I'm saying we won't get out of the other shit, but
no, I'm just saying we don't like. That's how much of this movie really doesn't stick with anybody because it's so boring.
It's really boring. I remember because I was a kid when I seen it, but God, this movie makes me feel like reminiscent of Street Fighter 3. How boring it was. You go into it expecting all this like, oh, ah, and more violence and boom, bow, and pow. And you go into it and you're like, what the fuck? When you play as a kid, you play Street Fighter, the game, and you go and watch the movie for the first time with Van Damme and Raul Julia.
That movie is awesome.
And you're like, and then Joanna Man's in there. And you're just like, come on, like, you're expecting more. Mm-hmm. You're expecting Blanca, and instead you get this Indian dude who's like being traumatized watching all this shit.
Yeah, all those characters were there, but they're just there like they had like one line and they get thrown out or
Now, if that movie had came out nowadays and no one had ever touched Street Fighter, ever did anything, and all of a sudden they did Street Fighter and they were doing it slow as a story, that movie may have held up just because they're like, well, they aren't touching the movie, they're building backstory. That's why Dalsum isn't anything. Blanca's on anything.
Well, they've made a second Street Fighter movie, live action, and it wasn't very good.
No. I'm just saying if the movies never came out, and they were just like building up to it, you could see how movies nowadays, with the technology they have and CGI they have, movies could be better than what they are. And to me, that's what makes movies lazy, is because I am a fan of movies. I'm a big fan of movies.
Yeah, me too.
And now I see movies like Captain Marvel, all these fucking movies come out, and what they do is they hit us with CGI in lieu of actual good storytelling or practical effects. And that is lazy to me. It tells me that you needed units C, D, and E to make up your movie instead of having like units A and B direct the good meat and potatoes, and then that's your movie. Unit C can clean up. They can go and do my fucking Babbling Brooks fucking recording. Well, you don't need that shit.
On that note, do we have a 10 that you can give me for this movie? I don't know.
You son of a... I like the fact that the guy from The Office was in there. Office Space, I mean.
Yeah.
The nerdy guy from Dodgeball.
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, this movie's really bad. You know, it is honestly. In all honesty, this movie's bad. It doesn't have a scene you can recall to, besides maybe RoboCop, his car flying off of the.
Oh yeah, off the parking structure
and landing without blowing up.
Yeah,
that was pretty fucking.
Police officer.
That was miraculous.
Oh yeah, you called for backup.
Yeah. My PA system's still working. Like that should have been the first line.
Yeah.
You
know what? Actually, what's funny is on the side of when RoboCop 2 came out, which my older brother was so psyched about that because you have Kane's shadow in his helmet on the poster, and my brother was going, now remember, RoboCop is 6'2", Kane is 7 foot, and I was like, why does that fucking matter? But okay.
Yeah.
But when we rented the movie, like he was so jacked to see it. Before the movie turned on, they did a 2-scene thing. So there's like, what's bugging you, Murphy? And he goes, Kane. Kane's bugging me. And then they go out to go fight Kane. They did a PSA where it's, what's bugging you, Murphy?
What's bugging you, Murphy?
Drugs. Drugs bug me.
Hi. That was Nancy Allen and me. I'm Peter Weller, the guy behind that mask.
Oh my god, that's great.
Yeah, and then it just cuts back to actual Peter Weller, who's all, hi guys.
I'm known to enjoy a few lines in my time, but for the sake of this movie, we'll pretend like I didn't.
I can't even do 10 Peter Weller.
No?
I could do 5.
What about the guy from Office Space?
I could do 4.
Oh, shit. Well, what about the lady who plays Lois? 2. That's including RoboCop 1.
I can do 3. I can do 3.
Oh. Well, then fuck it. I mean, fuck the challenge, because honestly...
Well, no, how about this? Give me somebody just who you randomly pick, and I'll see if I can do it.
I don't know if that's gonna hold up, but I will probably say, to make it fair, let's see if you can do 10 of the people who have been in the RoboCop movies.
Like 10 total?
So in 10 total, so let's say if you could do Peter Weller and the dude from Office Space, like in 10 total. You know what I mean?
All right, I know what you mean. Okay.
Yeah. That way we stay on RoboCop.
Not counting RoboCop.
I don't want to go off RoboCop.
Yeah, Buckaroo Banzai, Screamers.
Yeah.
The Order. There's 3 right there. Naked Lunch. Mm-hmm. Okay, I got 4. Homeboy that was in Office Space. So you got Office Space. Actually, I'll leave that alone. Dodgeball. Fucking Lone Ranger.
Yeah.
Okay, so I need 3. Lois, Poltergeist, Body of Evidence.
Oh, she was the mom in part 3, huh?
No. Oh yeah. She was the aunt.
Aunt, whatever.
She was the only one that lived. Actually, it was so weird.
Yeah.
Can I think of one more of those guys? Peter Weller was in the Dracula movie.
He was. And also, I was going to say, Peter Weller was in a pretty good God of War documentary, but that's pretty nerdy. If anybody remembers that. But he did the voice of that. And actually, Peter Weller does teach history, so...
he is. That's the coolest thing about him, I think.
It's pretty cool to think of RoboCop's voice, and like, what's so epic about RoboCop? Peter Weller is his voice.
Yeah. Oh, no, he is RoboCop.
He is. He pretty much embodies RoboCop. And you think about part 3, like, we can go on and on about this. But it's like, what if me and you were to put down in words what it is about RoboCop that makes him RoboCop? It was Peter Weller he sold himself as like a guy who's like, fuck, I'm not gonna die. I'm gonna come back to my family. I'm gonna do what's right. Even though he was dead, coming back technically from the dead, he had programmed himself so much that he was like, fuck, even back, he's like, these are my. And they gave him these operatives to run by. You know, he had from 1 to 4. He couldn't break those. It seems crazy that they chose someone that was he had already dictated his life by pretty much those standards.
Yeah.
That's why they had to look for a candidate, because it's not like you could just choose any Joe Blow off the street. They had already tried that in the RoboCop. According to them, they had tried candidates and they had failed.
Yeah. So
what was it about the movie RoboCop's character that made him successful?
I think what it was is that Peter Weller is a method actor.
Yeah.
And I wanted to bring this up is that there are so many of these like fan videos where it's like him doing like Q&As or meet and greets, and pardon me, he kind of hates the meet and greets because
stupid questions and they're repetitive.
Yeah, exactly. There's a video. It's called "Peter Weller is not an internet guy."
No.
And it's literally him. It's like a 12-second video. He's signing a RoboCop helmet, and somebody asked him, "Did you see what they said about you on the internet?" And he goes, "No, I'm not an internet guy."
No. I'm not an internet guy.
And that's it. But then like you see when he's like on the History Channel and he's talking about like ancient Egypt and he's so in his element, he's so happy, but just like you can tell he does not like talking to fans, or at least fans at that kind of environment. Because he did do a Buckaroo Banzai Q&A.
I do put myself in kind of that Peter Weller. I have done that, and honestly, it's kind of offensive if you look at it from Peter Weller's point of view. That you're someone who, you know what I mean? Like you're not just some dude who is acting. You're a human being. You live and you learn, and you have other things to teach people and show people. And people don't know Peter Weller as a teacher or as a professor. They know him as RoboCop, and that's it. And most people who aren't in school aren't going to ever see him or know him as Peter Weller, the guy who's going to teach them anything. Yeah. They're going to see him as like, did you hear what the internet said? He's gonna be like, oh my god, retard. Yeah. Pass.
Could you imagine that, like, okay, so nowadays this probably wouldn't happen. Well, here, this is how it happened nowadays. You go to class.
Yeah.
Professor Weller is your teacher. You call your parents. Yeah, I just started. Professor Weller is kind of a pain in the butt.
That would be
Weller.
A dick.
What's his Why is that name so familiar? I heard he was like a movie star back in the day. Peter Weller. What? Your parents was mine. Your professor's Peter Weller? I just think that's so cool.
It is cool, but I think if like on my graduation day or when I was leaving, I would say some shit like, Clarence, you work for OCB. And he'd be like, wait, what? Like, why are you causing this? Like, that might get me expelled that day. You know what I mean? I'm about to graduate, and then, like, I had to
with honors.
Yeah, with honors. I had to get my OCP line in there. You work for OCP.
OCP runs the gas.
Yeah, I work for the guy. That'd be great, but.
All right.
You have to be a RoboCop fan.
Let's go ahead and call it. We've been rambling on it quite a while, actually.
Yeah, you have to be a fan of the movies to care what we're saying.
Yes.
You have to be a bigger fan to care that what we're saying is actually offensive to other fans.
Yes. See RoboCop 1. See RoboCop 2. If you're bored, see RoboCop the remake, but stay away from this movie.
Yeah.
It's
even the remake pays more credence and honor to,
Yeah, I mean, that movie at least had, like, good CGI.
And Beetlejuice in it.
It had Beetlejuice, fuck yeah. Alright, we have one more for the Revenge of the Three. But this one I am looking forward to. It's not that bad. Ladies and gentlemen, next week, Terminator 3.
It's still pretty bad in my opinion.
It is.
So, I mean, you're being awfully kind.
I'm being kind, yeah. Alright, bye everybody.
Yeah, bye-bye.